Hey friends, welcome back to She's At It Again. Today I am making something for a meal train meal. A young friend of mine had a baby and we want to provide a meal for them. So we sign up on what's called Meal Train. Actually, to be honest, I haven't signed up on Meal Train. I'm one of those people that slides in just because I never know when I'll be available to bring something over, like leave the house or something like that. I mean, I don't want it to unrealistically make it sound like I'm so busy I don't know when I can leave, but it's just a whole lot easier and I think more convenient for the recipient if I can just take a meal and say, I didn't sign up for a meal, just put this in your refrigerator and use it when someone else either forgets or they can't make it over, or like I teased one of my friends here a while back, he said he was sick and I said, I'm going to bring a meal over, and he said, Beth, our friend Beth, who everybody knows is a fabulous cook, she's bringing something over tonight. And I said, oh, you won't want to eat her cooking. I'll bring something to keep you safe. And he thought that was so funny. Of course I was kidding, but he was allowed to put this in his refrigerator and just eat it when he was able to. So I'm sure he enjoyed Beth's meal. I don't know what she took over there, but I'm sure it was good. But he got a big kick out of that. So I have my skillet heating up. We're going to be making what's called a pork ribeye roast with mushroom gravy. Super simple. And I know I say that about a lot of things, but this one surprised me. I made this a couple of weeks ago for us. We had friends over after church and ate the whole thing. Just ate the whole thing. There was not one mushroom left on the plate. It was all enjoyed. But these little prime rib roasts, as fancy as it sounds, they're not expensive. It's a really good quality piece of meat as far as the taste of it. It's fabulous. So anyway, I thought we'd do something different today. So I have this skillet heating up. We're going to sear this ribeye roast. I'm going to just keep getting that warm. We're going to make a mixture for like a dry rub to put on it at first. So we need 1.5 teaspoons of salt. I'm going to just put this in the bowl and then I'll bring the roast over. Just kind of roll it around in it in just a minute. I need 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. And I'm just guessing at that. You know, I can't tell if that's 1/2 teaspoon of pepper in that or not. I need 1/2 teaspoon of thyme. Luckily, I have kind of all my spices right here at my fingertips. Or at least within arm's reach. Okay, 1/2 teaspoon of thyme. This is what thyme looks like. 1/2 teaspoon of sage. There's our sage. And then I have some crushed rosemary up here. I have fresh rosemary in the backyard, but I think the dried crushed will be fine for this. Okay, I'm reading my recipe, though. That's why I'm glancing down at the countertop. 1/2 teaspoon of rosemary. And then we need garlic powder. We need an entire teaspoon of garlic powder. Just give this a stir so it's all kind of evenly distributed in the mixture. And I have my ribeye roast. I took it out of the packaging and I rinsed it off. And for those of you who think, why would you rinse off a piece of meat? Because there's a little tiny piece of bone in it. And had I not rinsed it off, then I wouldn't have caught that. And I especially don't want to send that to somebody else's house with a piece of bone in it. Okay, I'm going to go get the roast over at the sink. The The reason I have this sitting out, though, is because you're supposed to allow it to rest for about 30 minutes before you ever start cooking it. Now notice I'm keeping this hand dry and clean. Because I'm a champion at making a mess, that is for sure. I clean it up pretty quickly, but I can make a mess. Okay, not touching the olive oil container with my hand that has been touching a dead pig, basically, is what you're dealing with here, people. Okay, a couple of teaspoons of olive oil in the skillet. Not a lot. But once I drop this in the skillet, I'm going to run over and wash my hands real well. Okay, this is basically what we're dealing with here. Just a ribeye roast. This is just a little over 2 pounds, and that's what the recipe calls for. And I pretty much am getting all those spices out of there. Okay, we're going to sear this on all sides. Okay, clean hands. Now, this pan really doesn't look that big, but I think this roast will fit in there, plus the mushroom gravy. But I'll bake it in this and maybe put the mushroom gravy on, but I'll actually put it in a different pan to take it to my friend's house because I don't want them to have to return a dish to me. If you're in a position of where you're depending on people to bring you a meal, you really don't need to be in charge of taking dishes back. That's a big challenge. Unless there's one person in charge of a meal train that goes and collects the dishes and takes them either back to a church building or delivers them to your house, it's kind of difficult. I've been in that position before, and it was worrisome to me because I was afraid I'd forget to take somebody's pan back to them. I have my small oven out in the sunroom preheating to 425 degrees. And I know that sounds hot, but we're only going to cook this roast for about 25 to 30 minutes. I know it sounds crazy, but it really works. We're going to be using the same skillet to make our mushroom gravy in, so make sure you have a big enough skillet to where you can actually make something else in it. Don't put it in a teeny tiny one. Checking all the sides to make sure I have everything pretty evenly seared. Searing is not hard. All you're doing is basically touching it to that hot skillet. And apparently it's supposed to seal in the juices. With this one, I promise it works. Or if it doesn't work, it tastes like it does, because this is such a very moist roast when you're done with it. Okay, don't worry about all the seasoning that sticks in the skillet, because you're going to make your mushroom gravy and it'll be incorporated into that anyway, so it all gets used. All right, I'm going to turn this burner off. Put this in the pan. I'm going to transfer this out to my other oven, and then when we come back, we'll start making our mushroom gravy, but I got to go out to the freezer and get them. I'll tell you the story about the mushrooms in just a minute. Okay, we're back. All right, let me get something. This is what I'm looking for right here. All right, put the skillet back on the burner. We're going to turn the burner back on. Kind of a medium to medium low. All right, first thing we want to do is put 3 tablespoons of butter in our skillet. I don't know if you've ever seen how I do my butter, but when I get a stick of butter out, I put little marks in it. I divide it in half, put a mark with the back side of the knife, not the blade side, because that wouldn't make a very big mark, but I use the back side of the knife, kind of press down in it, and I mark out my tablespoons, just so if somebody else is using my kitchen, which doesn't happen very often, they'll go, oh, okay, I know how much is left in here, because some people go, how much butter is that? So I got it marked. Three tablespoons of butter in your skillet. Now that's a skillet with just cooked the roast in, so that's all that's been in that. We're going to take a little shallot. This is what a shallot looks like. It's like an onion, but it's just milder. And I enjoy cooking with these. There's a few recipes that I just won't use an onion in because it's just too sulfury and strong. But the shallots are really nice. Now this recipe originally calls for 1/4 of a cup. If you got a 1/4 of a cup, that's fine. This little shallot is probably not a 1/4 of a cup. I would say closer to a little over 1/8 of a cup. And I'm just going to cut this in half and slice it thinly. Put your shallot in with your butter. We're going to saute that just a bit. Now I want to tell you about these mushrooms real quick. So if you're like me, I really like fresh mushrooms a lot. I mean, a lot. So I try to stock up on them. But as you know, fresh mushrooms only keep for so long in the refrigerator. So what I like to do is when they're on sale, I will buy a lot of them, bring them home, clean them up, brush them off real good with a dry, clean toothbrush that I use in the kitchen, and chop them up and put them in the freezer. So, as you know, my symbol for organic is this little circle with the line on each side. That's just how I say these are organic mushrooms. So I label the bag, to put in the freezer. Well, the other day I went to Kroger and I was just going to get button mushrooms because it's a good mushroom. If I want something really high quality that I need that really powerful taste to it, I'll buy creminis or portobellos or something like that. But I don't normally spend a lot of money on portobellos. They're just your more expensive mushrooms. Well, I went to Kroger last Tuesday for my old lady discount day, and they had packages of portobello mushrooms that had been about $5, marked down to $1.65, I think. So I called my neighbor. I asked her if she needed any, and she said, yes, please. I picked her up a couple, and I bought the rest of them, brought them home. I chopped them all up, put them in freezer bags, and stuck them in the freezer. So that's my stash of mushrooms. So when you want fresh mushrooms, whether you're making a pizza or pasta or something like this, frozen mushrooms work perfectly fine. They do not lose any of their good qualities. So just a helpful hint, if you see those portobellos on sale, grab them, take them home, chop them up, stick them in the freezer. All right, this calls for about 8 ounces of mushrooms. That onion smells fabulous. Or that shallot, I should say. It's not an onion. Okay, so this is more than 8 ounces. I'm going to put about 8 ounces of mushrooms in here. Zip this up and stick it back in the freezer. We also need a half a teaspoon of thyme in this mixture. So get out our bottle of thyme again. I'm not really a fan of thyme. I got to be honest with you. Sometimes when it calls for thyme in recipes, I'll just leave it out because I don't really care for the taste of it. But in this one, I left it in there, and I'm glad I did because it's really good. I need 3 tablespoons of dry cooking sherry or dry cooking wine. This is just a Pinot Grigio. I am not a wine aficionado at all. This is what I do. I just use it to cook with. So I was with my friend at Costco, and I said, I don't have a clue if I'm buying good, bad, or gross. So she pointed this one out to me. So I trust her judgment on this. We're going to need 3 tablespoons. My seasonings on my roast while ago jumped out of the bowl. So I'm cleaning those up off my counter. It's a good thing I cleaned the counter before I started. Otherwise, I'd be putting dust and everything else in there. The nice thing about this recipe is about the 25 minutes it takes for that roast to finish cooking, 25 to 30 minutes, you got your mushroom gravy made. It goes together so beautifully. The recipe does not recommend necessarily, it doesn't mention slicing it before you put the mushroom gravy on, but I just found it was easier to serve the other day. So once I took it out of the oven, I brought it in here. I took a very sharp knife. I sliced the roast, and then when I poured the mushroom gravy on it, the roast kind of fanned out. It was just beautiful. It was just so pretty. I felt so fancy when I was doing it, and everybody knows that eats at our house. I am not fancy. It tastes good, but I am not fancy at all. I like for it to look fancy, but it normally doesn't even look fancy. All right, we'll pour our cooking sherry in there. We're going to add 3 tablespoons of flour to this. If you're gluten sensitive, I have a feeling rice flour would work fine in this, a good quality brown rice flour, but I have not tried it yet, so if you try it and it flops, then let me know. That flour soaks in pretty rapidly into that hot liquid, which is what you want it to do. This is basically making a roux, but you've kind of jumped ahead a step. Normally you add the flour to the fat, then start adding other things, but these are high water content vegetables like your onions and mushrooms and stuff, so this works out great. Or I should say high moisture content. Okay, to this, 2 cups of good quality chicken broth. And this is chicken bone broth that I made back in March, and it has been in the super cold part of my garage refrigerator. I'm making rolls, homemade rolls at the same time I'm making this for the same person I'm sending the roast over there to. So I have my timer on my phone, which I'm using to video from that angle. And the last thing you're going to do to this mushroom gravy is just add salt and pepper. You can always add more later, but you can add less. But I kind of remember from 2 weeks ago when I made, I think it was 2 weeks ago, almost 2 weeks ago, when I made this, about how much pepper and salt I added to it, and it was perfect. So about a teaspoon of salt and about a half teaspoon of pepper. As you can see, that has gotten thick, and it has a great, great texture to it. I don't want to cook it too much longer because they'll heat this up again when they heat up the roast to enjoy it for dinner that night, so it won't have a problem staying thick. Okay, I'll set this off the burner, and then when our roast comes out, we'll slice it and transfer it to another pan. I got to figure out which pan I'm going to send over that I don't necessarily want back. All right. That gravy's so yummy. It really is. You wouldn't even need a roast underneath it. It's just good by itself. Okay, we'll be right back, and we'll show you our final product. Okay, our roast is cooked. It took between 25 and 30 minutes. I can't remember what I set the timer on. Maybe, we'll just guess 30. So I have a clean fork. I have a serrated edge knife. And I'm going to slice this. I'm going to try to pick this up and show it to you, just show you how pretty it is. Isn't that beautiful? Yep, I'll hold it over this. Can you see how pretty that is? Now I'm going to slice these in pretty thick slices. There's only, I think, 3 adults at that house where this meal is going, so it's not like they have to be sparingly with it. They have more food coming in each day. Our church family is so good about providing meals, and I love going on meal train if nothing else. Even if all the days are filled up, I just like to see what people send to somebody else's house. I think that's so much fun to see the variety that people come up with. I may be sticking this back in the oven more because it looks like it's not completely cooked all the way through. Maybe I should have gone 35 minutes. So when you cook yours, do it for 35. This is the advantage to slicing this before we pour the mushroom gravy on, because if it's still not quite done all the way in the center, you can always pop it back in the oven, which is exactly what I'm fixing to do. I'll just slice it first though. I did find a pan that I had bought recently that I thought, oh, that would be the perfect size for this. And if it does, it'll probably make it back to my house, but if it doesn't, it's not going to be a deal breaker. It's not like it matches anything else. It's not a part of a set or anything. So it will be fine. That just slices so pretty. Okay, I can just see that this very center of the middle of the roast is not quite done, so I'm going to pop this back in that oven again, set for 425, and I'll maybe cook it for 5 or 10 more minutes, and then I'll take a look at it. So I'll just show you a final product once we get the gravy on there, so at least you know what it looks like. Okay, so I cooked that for 10 more minutes. It seems to be done, so we'll just go with it. Again, they have to cook it again before they serve it, because I will take it over there in a refrigerated state. All right, I'm going to try to get this in this pan, making as little mess as possible. Notice I didn't say not making a mess, because that's going to be impossible here. Okay, that worked pretty good. That is still hot. All right, now I want to make sure you can get a good look at this. So I'm going to turn this camera down this way. All right, this gravy thickened up beautifully. So I'm just going to pour this over the roast. Spread that all around. And I'm going to take this reserved drippings over here from that pan and just add that to it. That's just going to add that much more flavor to it, because that spice mixture smells wonderful. Okay, that's going to all get washed. The nice thing about doing these videos in segments is every time I turn the camera off, I run and wash the dishes or go fold the laundry or something like that. So by the time it's done, I've got a clean kitchen except for these pans right here. Okay, so this is our pork ribeye roast with mushroom gravy And I can't say enough good things about the flavor of this gravy. It is absolutely fabulous. All right, so that's our final product. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to sharing something again with you real soon. Thanks, guys.